JP, does you being at the press conference, does that mean you're going to get a game tomorrow?
We'll find out later after practice. Team selections obviously after practice, so I'm hoping that there's an opportunity. Yes, obviously 2 games left. Would be nice to end off playing a game in a World Cup. Yeah.
JP, how disappointing would it have been to come to this World Cup only play 3 games if after you've already announced that you'll be retiring from ODI cricket?
It's disappointing, yes. It's not the biggest disappointment. If I had played 3 games and we had made a playoff or fought for the title, I think anyone, or particularly myself, would be in a lot happier position. I think the most disappointing part obviously has been our team performance, and I think it will be remiss of me not to mention how disappointed we are. Particularly letting all our fans down back home. It's been pretty dismal from our part, and we wish that we could point out one thing or the reason why we haven't performed. I think we've put in a lot of effort in terms of our preparation, in terms of our strategy, going out there with a good mindset, a strong mindset. But unfortunately, we haven't been able to produce and executed our plans. And that's been the most disappointing part for all of us, including myself. And we obviously just want to apologize to the public and South African fans for letting them down. When you represent your country, it's always a proud moment, and you understand that you represent 50, 60 million people. That's a proud moment in itself. And when you're putting performances like that, you in a way almost feel ashamed of that. But we know that it's not all lost, even though yes, it is a World Cup, and I believe that this team will come back stronger. There will be obviously some sort of introspection around where we've gone wrong, and that's going to be some conversations had post-World Cup. And as I said, I believe that we will come back stronger.
JP, it's a slightly different, well, maybe a very different dynamic for you, because you'd already announced that you were retiring and that. Just maybe if you can just give us some insight into how this tournament has felt for you, because you're retiring at the end, compared to some of the other guys who still have a future, who still have to carry on and pick up the pieces, if you like.
Yeah, the last thing I would have thought is playing the first 3 games and being left out, particularly after a retirement call. But that's the nature of the beast, You never guaranteed a selection. Everybody has an opportunity not to be selected if you're not putting in performances. It's a bittersweet moment for me, wanting to end off on a real high in terms of international one-day cricket. But unfortunately, it wasn't meant to be. And I think the important thing for me is when you reflect post-World Cup is to see where I could have done better, but also you're kind of in a space of awe. Why I say that is because you're sort of looking back not only on a World Cup, you're looking back on a 15-year career. And that's something that I'm very proud of and very grateful for, to be able to date play 197 games. It's not something that I've thought about or dreamt of being a young boy. So, those are the sort of positives that you'll take away. But yeah, it is a little bit different for guys that'll carry on, because they, as you said, have to pick up some of the pieces that have fallen in this World Cup. But I think that is what makes a strong South African team. We've always been resilient. We've always had opportunities to come back, and that's why I said there will be opportunities to come back, and I have no doubt that this team will come back stronger and be even more prepared and driven to put in a really good performance in 4 years' time.
JB, if you can elaborate on that a bit, just what that process looks like. I mean, when the guys get home, what does Cricket South Africa do in terms of taking those steps to recover from this?
I wish I could give you that answer. I'm not sure. Obviously, I heard reports that heads will roll, but if I look at our management staff and the amount of work they've put in over the last 2 years, and it's always a difficult one when they bear the most brunt of our performances. the important thing for us is to take responsibility for that and sort of stand up and be man enough to know that, we've come up short. They've given us the support, they've given us all the backing that we need to go out there and put in big performances, but unfortunately we are the ones that have come up short. So in terms of the decisions that Cricket South Africa make, that's out of my hands. That I don't know what decisions will be made. But going on the back of previous World Cups, there'll probably be some shifting, and I think that's a reality that we all understand. What shifting will take place, that's out of my hands, but it's important for us to be accountable for our actions.
JP, is there we all know, South Africans in this room, about Vision 2019 and all of these things that went into this World Cup in terms of planning and everything else. It was possibly South Africa's most ever planned World Cup, and the team have been so utterly uncompetitive in most of their games. Does that make you think that science is lying? And is it a worry that, if you do all that, how can it go so badly? Is that a worry?
I wouldn't say it's a worry in that science is a liar. I think it's a combination of a few things. I think you got to understand what play science has in the game. I'm always been a big fan of the mental side of the game, so that's an important facet that we need to make sure that we cover. Are things put in place for us to be mentally fresh, mentally strong when it comes to the pressure moments of the game? So those are kind of things that we want to reflect on. In terms of our preparation, were guys fresh? Were guys technically sound? There's a whole host of things that one can reflect on and point fingers at. But I'm always going to come back to the fact that, particularly at this level, you are accountable for your own game. There's a lot of mature guys in this team that have been around for 2-3 World Cups. And unfortunately, we haven't had the answers for the questions that have been posed at us this World Cup. And that's a difficult pill to swallow. With myself, this is being my 3rd World Cup. Coming here pretty confident that I can put in big performances for the team, and not being able to do that. I walk away feeling pretty disappointed with that. And I think everybody will have that self-reflection, and for me, that's the most important thing.
JP, you've obviously been around quite a long time, and you've seen a lot of things happen. It does look like this time there's a lot more kind of outside stuff going on, and I'm just wondering, you've seen administrations change and so on. How much has the outside stuff played a role in what's going on here? How much do you think about things like Saka taking CSA to court, etc.?
Honestly, I think it's had no part. We've been strong, particularly the leadership of this team. We've been strong on the fact that we've created a bubble, and there are certain things that we understand where that sits. It sits outside the bubble. So coming here, that has been the last thing on our mind. We had one mission, and that was to play really good cricket in this World Cup and give ourselves a good chance to get into that playoffs and take it from there. But unfortunately, we've come up short, and our skills haven't been good enough on this trip. From a batting perspective, nobody's stood up to score hundreds, partnerships, no hundreds. From a bowling perspective, we had opportunities, but unfortunately, we've never closed it down. So those are the things that we need to reflect on. Outside influences, we are a mature group of men that have come along for a long way, and we can't use that as an excuse. We are professionals, and I think we've created a good environment and a culture that understands how to block out the negativity, and we know that there's a job at hand, and we got to find a way to get it done.
JP, just looking ahead post World Cup, your plans, you're playing T20 cricket, but are there coaching plans? Are there commentary plans? What is? There possibly vacancies coming up. Is that part of is that part of the plan going forward?
To be honest, I haven't looked that far. Obviously got a few T20 leagues lined up, and just taking it sort of series by series and seeing how things unfold. With getting older, the body takes its toll. So it's kind of just assessing that, understanding where my family is, young family growing up, so you want to be at home. and just kind of planning and thinking about what's next in terms of post-playing cricket. Obviously had a few stints in the commentary box, which I enjoyed, and hopefully I don't, chirp the current players too much.
JP, your career obviously you will always be remembered for that 166 that you got against Australia, but kind of inconsistencies as you've gone along. How much are you using these last two games, if you are selected, to kind of leave on like a real high note and be remembered for 100 tomorrow?
And I don't say this boastfully. I say this because I think it's the honest truth. For me, legacy is not in performance. I think legacy is the person you are. And for me, it's about being a good person. It's about influencing people in the right way. So that, for me, is the biggest legacy. There's no doubt that I want to put in a big performance for the team, for the public, for the fans that have supported us through thick and thin. But for me, the legacy lies in, when people look back or think of you and they've had the opportunity to interact with you, I don't think 100 is the thing that they remember. They remember the impact they had on you, that you had on their life. And I think that's the most important thing for me. The friendships that are formed with this group of men that we have, and previously before, those are the things that I'll hold on to. Playing for South Africa, there's no doubt that performance is one of the most important things. And it doesn't stop you from wanting to put in big performances. But ultimately, for me, that's not the end all and be all.
JP, Leo side post World Cup, how motivated are you guys to stop Sri Lanka in having a chance of qualifying for the semi-finals? They still have a couple of games left about tomorrow's game.
No, I wouldn't say that's a mission of ours. I think the important mission for us is to play good cricket. The cricket that we know and the brand that we know we are capable of playing. And I think if we do that, particularly tomorrow and the game against Australia, we give ourselves the best chance of beating them. We've played good cricket against Sri Lanka a few months ago and recently in South Africa. So we know we can beat them. We know we can put in big performances. But the important thing is to look introspectively and how we're going to do that. We don't have a grudge against Sri Lanka to want to kick them out of the World Cup. It's not about that. I think the important thing for us is to make sure we put in a big performance.
JP, you touched a little bit on the comments that have been made by former players. Do you feel as if though that that just becomes part of the job, that you become critical of the national team, especially when the team hasn't performed, and you yourself you've been in this position before in the commentary box? And what does the leadership group, the guys like Hash, Faf, yourself, who've been here for a long time, think about that sort of criticism, and does it harm the team?
I think there will be certain guys that will take it personally, but again, like I mentioned earlier about the bubble, those kind of things stay outside of the bubble, and we try and keep it out as much as possible. But the difficulty with that is certain guys will have relationships with past players, and if a past player has a comment, whether it's a negative or positive, whatever it may be, it can possibly affect certain players. The important thing for me is that we understand the context of where it comes from and why it's coming from there. I think there's a big part of it is that past players still feel a part of a team, and they feel the sort of pain possibly of the poor performance, and they want to see guys putting in big performances. But when you have agendas, that's something that's out of our control, and it's difficult for us to have a say over that because we don't understand the agenda, where it comes from, what's the meaning behind it, and that's why it's important for us to try and keep it outside of the bubble as best as possible. At the moment, the most important thing is what's inside, and that is this group of players and the management, and we need to try and look after them as best as possible. So whatever happens outside, that's their own prerogative, and at the end of the day, they know the real reason why they're saying what they're saying, and that's out of our control.
JP, Sri Lanka's coach said that once a team has been knocked out of the World Cup, effectively they can either they can either rock up to the field playing with freedom or with one foot already on the plane. You guys probably want the former to happen. How do you make sure that's what happens then?
I think that's a personal thing. From a leadership point of view, you can speak about that, but ultimately you need to make that decision for yourself. Is your foot on the plane, or does that give you a sense of freedom? I 100% agree with the freedom. Just go out and play your natural game, your naturally gifted game. And that's not a cop-out. That's just an understanding that you have almost the license to just go out and play with the freedom that you were allowed to play with almost as a young kid, and play with a smile on your face, play to enjoy the game. And that's the kind of mentality that I certainly want to end off my international one-day career with. Just enjoying having fun with my friends on the field, and understand what a huge privilege it was to represent my country so many times. And you should never take it for granted. And if any of us has one foot on the plane, that means you're taking it for granted. And that's definitely something that we don't want to encourage.